There's talk among the Tok'ra ranks that the end is closer than we think. And I don't mean the end of the Goa'uld. I mean the end of us. All of us.
The threat of the Goa'uld is hard to pin down. Part of the issue is how badly they hoard technology. Their vassal states are kept primitive, with only occasional access to technology. You need to reach the highest echelons of the Goa'uld Empire to see their advanced technology. The other issue is that the Goa'uld are not a unified nation. Every Goa'uld has its own strengths and weaknesses. What might work against one is not guaranteed to work against all. When I mention Goa'uld technology, I'm going to have to put an asterisk next to a lot of them. Not all, but a lot. Reason being, only some of the Goa'uld have that technology, while others don't. As I mentioned, I believe the Goa'uld are misunderstood as a race. This idea that they were never really all that powerful and folded at the presence of the Tari is not supported by what is shown even in the slightest, even if we disregard expanded media. Another aspect I want to touch upon is the idea that the Goa'uld are scavengers and pirates who only steal technology, never invent. This isn't wholly inaccurate, but I think it's a bit misleading. We do know that the Goa'uld do invent things. Ptah created the Goa'uld Fleet, Telchak created the sarcophagus, they created TERs, Nirti was very close to creating the supernatural Ha'tak, and so on. So where's this stuff about them being pure scavengers come from? Also, what makes the Goa'uld scavengers as opposed to everyone else? The SGC takes technologies from enemies. Now you may say that it's because the SGC are not as aggressive and willing to negotiate. But even if the SGC went into the galaxy as conquerors, you probably wouldn't call them scavengers and thieves. So what makes the Goa'uld scavengers and thieves as opposed to just conquerors? Let's put this into perspective. At our current level of technology, our computational power is doubling with each passing year. This is not the result of any one scientist, but millions of scientists all over the globe. Breakthroughs are not made by a singular genius, but a multitude working either together or in competition. Every country has a massive number of skeletons in their closet, some fresher than others. Go to any country and just about everything they have is an offshoot of something taken from someone else, perhaps through trade, perhaps through conquest. But there's the thing, it's literally hundreds times removed from the original, improved upon by a small army of scientists. Now let's compare that to the Goa'uld scientists, say Nirti, who wanted to create a supernaturally gifted Ha'tak host. How many scientists were on her team? 1. She had taken on the endeavor by herself. Had she assembled a team of scientists, she likely would have achieved her goal long ago. Well, why didn't she? Because if there's one thing that holds the Goa'uld back, it's their nature. If Nirti did work with a team of Goa'uld scientists, whoever managed to finally make the breakthrough would sabotage the project to make sure no other could succeed, then use the newly acquired powers to overthrow Nirti, and she knows this. So she takes on the endeavor by herself. And this is the perfect example of the Goa'uld being held back by their own nature. They could easily increase their power of the Empire, but it means less personal power. Goa'uld scientists are rare, and their work is kept under strict supervision, lest their masters want to get risk getting overthrown. While the lack of manpower is slightly offset by the sheer genius of the Goa'uld, they are ultimately massively short-staffed. And that's not even including the times the Goa'uld spend leading, basking in the glory, and personally overseeing their oppression. And they cannot recruit the vassal states for scientists. Not only are vassal states kept uneducated, but sharing knowledge undermines the Goa'uld as gods. And while modern technology and culture may be 100 times removed from the original stolen design, Goa'uld technology is only a few generations removed from the original, despite having acquired it thousands to tens of thousands of years ago. When push comes to shove, the Goa'uld can and do come up with new things. However, the bulk of their innovations is dependent on other civilizations making it first. And that's assuming the Goa'uld are actually putting effort into innovating and not just basking in the glory of their warship. You're going to find this a very common theme. The Goa'uld could achieve so much if it wasn't for their twisted nature. Here's another example. The Goa'uld have taken a prisoner. How did they get the knowledge out? The easiest way is to implant them with a symbiote who gains all the knowledge. Should be easy, but it isn't. The new Goa'uld is both ally and potential enemy. If a Goa'uld uses implantation as a means to an end, they have to consider the possibility that this new Goa'uld will try to usurp them. And now you see why the Tok'ra keep saying the biggest threat is a unified Goa'uld empire. And this idea is further expanded upon in the expanded material. Now, expanded material is canonically contentious, but it explains that the bulk of the Goa'uld Fleet is often having a standoff defending its domain, meaning the motherships you see moving around or attacking are the ones they have to spare. Accurately analyzing the threat of the Goa'uld is difficult. They are an empire of contradictions. While you can use cliches like "don't underestimate your opponent," the Goa'uld do not toe the line between terrifying brilliance and inaptitude, but rather jump across it when they feel. Let's put this into perspective. During World War I, Earth had never seen such destructive weapons and used in war before, and they used outdated tactics against them. The result was devastating. But in response, Earth developed better strategies. After all, isn't that what strategy is? A way to achieve your goals while minimizing losses and resource usage. The Jaffa, the slave soldiers of the Goa'uld, understand this, and there are brilliant Jaffa leaders who will achieve great things with very little and few losses, whose stories and legends are told to future generations. However, they are undermined by their Goa'uld masters, who will not brook disobedience even in the smallest form. Plus, the Goa'uld aren't just bad managers, they're gods. The Jaffa believe that if they fail, they face damnation. So if a Goa'uld orders his Jaffa to forego strategy and rush a position, they'll rush the position. Sometimes they won't even wait for the order from their master. Let's say a Goa'uld wants to take a fortified position. The Jaffa might come up with a plan, like starving them out, luring them out, or subtle infiltration. But if the Goa'uld grow impatient, the Jaffa will resort to more drastic tactics. Which means, you guessed it, bomb rush the position.
As First Prime, that power will be yours. When Apophis throws his armies into the fire, you will be there to temper his sword. In so doing, you may save countless lives, as I have done in my time.
And you have done all these things against his will.
His will can be made to bend, but not always.
The battle did not go well. Ra's warriors were in far greater numbers than we believed.
You were given a battalion.
Ra sent his gliders down upon us. We were flanked, bombarded from the sky. There was no choice but to retreat.
Shakrivalar.
It was the only way to save my men.
And yourself.
No! I intend to return, and with greater numbers, I would drive Ra's warriors from their foothold.
Yet he has returned in disgrace.
Perhaps not in disgrace, my lord. But as part of a cunning strategy. To withdraw, only to return in greater numbers to crush an overconfident enemy. Valar himself would like to lead the second wave.
Does he?
My lord, allow me to...
You would have done the same in his place, would you, Teal'c?
No, my lord.
You would have held your ground in the name of your god.
Yes, my lord.
Then return with him to his place of shame and kill him.
Now, normally a nation on Earth will not do this, not only because they value the lives of their soldiers, but also they're strapped for resources in a way. But not the Goa'uld. They do not care about the lives of their Jaffa, and are definitely not strapped for resources, and most critically, have been unchallenged for thousands of years. The Goa'uld have become stagnant. They resort to better tactics if they become desperate or impatient. But since they steamrolled everybody thousands of years ago, they are rarely desperate. Meaning when fighting the Goa'uld, prepare for brilliance, but don't be surprised if the troops start rushing at you like Zerglings. What you're seeing isn't the result of stupidity nor incompetence, it's the result of a hyper-toxic work environment. As strange as this sounds, a normal human like you or I can get a brief taste of what this is like. If I take an RTS game like StarCraft, you see, I have a bad position. A sentry that will block the bridge with a shield, photon cannons, and a High Templar will slaughter my troops. The strategic thing would be to use marauders to depower the photon cannons, bait out a storm, then rush the bridge.
Additional supply depots required.
Go ahead. Yo. Armed and ready. Aye, aye. Who wants some? I feel ya. Gangway. Coming through. That's fine. Sure thing. Why not? You got it.
But I don't have that care, so I go mass marines and order the troops to charge.
Additional supply depots required.
Did I lose a lot of them? Yes. Was there a better way to do it? Yes. But I got a lot of troops and a lot of resources, who cares? That is the Goa'uld mindset. And yeah, if I can't break the fortifications, then I'll pull back for better tech. But that's only after a lot of lost lives. What you face will depend on the Goa'uld you're fighting. Some are very strategic, accomplishing a lot with very little. Goa'uld with a penchant for research will likely whip out the most advanced state-of-the-art technology. Or they have breakthroughs in stealth technology. And some are little more than single-minded brutes, preferring to win by throwing corpses at the enemy. When attacking a planet, they follow an identical modus operandi. The first stage is intelligence gathering. This can be done by Goa'uld infiltrators. Since Goa'uld take the memories of their hosts, they can easily figure out a civilization's technology and political structure.
Very well. You know the truth. Now how shall we proceed?
If necessary, they'll work their way to the top levels of government, if it exists, to weaken the leadership of the would-be opposition. Another method is simple scanning. Even cloaked scout ships can do a sweep of the planet and figure out how many live on it, where, and where all the technology is.
We're approaching the planet. Run a surface scan. 4 life signs. Let's go greet them.
Once information gathering is complete, the next stage is the culling. The reason is multifaceted. One is to cull the planet's population into manageable size. If we take a planet like Earth with a population of billions, no matter how advanced or skilled the army is, they will be hopelessly outnumbered. And they need hundreds of ships to match the billions. If they want to land troops to round up the cattle, they need the cows to be in a manageable number. Another is to cripple the planetary defenses. And finally, instill fear in the population. They open up with a long-range assault from orbit. Their targets are dense population centers, planetary defenses, and military installations.
I didn't hit Colorado Springs from orbit like most of the big cities, so the table must still be set.
Cold by now.
Let's do what we need to do.
What you'll witness depends on how big and how advanced the civilization is. If you're a single city, they'll probably pepper you with a few bolts no more powerful than an artillery cannon.
From this day forth, you will serve me.
But if you're a thriving planet with advanced technology, they will crank up the yields to create explosions rivaling Earth's nukes.
Now, if they fire on us, chances are we won't even feel it. Blasts on the East Coast were the equivalent of 200 megaton nuclear warheads.
Once the population has been culled and its military crippled, the Goa'uld will launch Outcash bombers and death gliders to scout the landscape and launch tactical strikes against any remaining ground position. After that, they'll land and put troops on the ground. The denizens are rounded up. Many will be taken as hosts, so their knowledge will be added to the Goa'uld collective. Others enslaved, experimented on. The planet's technology will be scavenged and reverse engineered. The biologies of the species will be judged if they are useful or not. If they are, then the Goa'uld will keep them around. Perhaps for study and experimentation, perhaps for breeding, perhaps for other nefarious purposes.
Ships appeared 4 days ago.
This is what happened to the humans. Because human biology was deemed useful, they were carted off-world, bred to be slaves or hosts, experimented on and mutated to create the Jaffa. You may have heard how a smaller force can repel invaders through things like guerrilla tactics. It won't work here. Goa'uld ships are equipped with life sign detectors, which let them locate any pockets of resistance. Guerrilla forces in hiding will be discovered. The Goa'uld will exploit the planet and its people to its full potential. Your biology and technology will be added to the Goa'uld collective. Once that is done, it depends. If the Goa'uld want to keep the planet, they will level the surface and wipe out all traces of advanced civilization. They may let the people survive, enslaved and living under Goa'uld occupation, but they will be kept as a primitive and uneducated population, forced to worship the Goa'uld as gods.
Now what?
After enough generations, nobody will remember the better times.
We go home.
However, that's the optimistic scenario. To truly put the Goa'uld threat into perspective, let me go over all the ways they can wipe out the planet without ever setting foot on its surface. If you piss them off bad enough, they'll wipe you out without regret. The first way is glassing. Though we've never actually seen it happen, we have seen its aftermath. The Goa'uld will bombard a planet from orbit, rendering the planet uninhabitable, the surface radioactive.
We must return to Earth as quickly as possible.
Why? What is that?
It is the symbol of Koroshnai. It is for any Goa'uld or Jaffa who may pass through the gate. Loosely translated, it means turn back.
Does it elaborate?
It is placed on worlds Goa'uld destroyers have wiped out and left contaminated. This planet's entire surface will be, in your terms, radioactive. No one will be left alive. This place is not safe.
In expanded media, this is what happened to Talana. The orbital bombardment of a single mothership triggered a whole slew of natural disasters, including earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, as well as reshaped the landscape. The planet's crust had even begun to split apart, mountains were leveled, dust and debris completely blotted out the sun, the weather had been permanently changed. The next way is a Naquadah bomb. Naquadah is incredibly reactive and can enhance the power of explosions. If you have enough Naquadah, you can destroy an entire planet. That said, you do need sufficient Naquadah. Anytime a Naquadah bomb was used to destroy a planet, it was also reacting with the Naquadah in the crust.
Well, you'd better have a damn good reason, because I was 20 minutes away from detonating a weapons-grade shipment of Naquadah that would have vaporized a sizable chunk of this planet.
You were hoping for a chain reaction with the Naquadah in the soil. Sir, that entire planet could be destroyed.
The possibility has been considered. Most worlds occupied by the Goa'uld do have a high incidence of Naquadah. This could be a very effective weapon against them.
This segues into the next method, that being an asteroid. The Goa'uld could launch a large asteroid at the planet, though this probably has fallen out of favor since the only worlds you'd want to wipe out are advanced, and probably have the means to stop a giant asteroid, turning this into a waste of time. We see Anubis launch an asteroid at Earth, which would have wiped out all life on it. SG-1 would discover that the asteroid was not made of nickel and iron, but in fact had a Naquadah core. While the amount of Naquadah was significantly larger than what would normally be given to a nuke, so would the explosion.
What happens when that bomb goes off?
Well, the explosion will be enhanced by the Naquadah, probably to the force of a small nova. This close to Earth, it would be enough to set the atmosphere on fire and boil the oceans.
Another method is through the use of plague. Apophis has tried to attack Earth with a plague that would have destroyed all organic life in under a week. The only reason Earth wasn't destroyed was because they stopped it from being released.
It would have taken less than 2 days for this organism to spread across North America. Less than a week to spread around the world.
And what would it have done?
Killed every living thing on Earth within 24 hours of contact.
But some of the more impressive Goa'uld technology isn't even destructive. It's how they can manipulate the mind. The Goa'uld make excellent infiltrators, and Earth has come close to having their leaders taken as hosts several times. Because of the multitude of ways a Goa'uld can take control, the most reliable way of detecting one is some sort of biological scan. X-ray, MRI, CAT scan. Goa'uld are easily the most dangerous, being incredibly intelligent as well as stronger and faster than the host. Also, if there's one Goa'uld, there is a chance they brought symbiotes with them. Next up is brainwashing. This is closer to indoctrination used by the Reapers of Mass Effect, and we've seen several ways of achieving this. One of them is Nishta, a biological compound that infects every tissue in the body, including the brain. It needs to be inhaled and makes the mind extremely pliable. In a way, you could call these microbial Goa'uld, though instead of having the symbiote's mind subjugate the host, the Nishta compels the host to obey the Goa'uld. Nishta does have one weakness, and that is electric shock. If you let the organism infect every cell in the body, you can use an electric shock to kill it, but you have to wait for it to infect every cell, otherwise it'll spread again. But if you succeed, the host becomes immune. Side note, I'm pretty sure this is a retcon because in an earlier episode, they had resolved brainwashing with electrocompulsive therapy.
Whoa, electroshock? Isn't that kind of barbaric?
A treatment that would be deemed ineffective to undo brainwashing and inhumane, so they had to retcon the reason for it working. We've seen an offshoot used by Hathor. It controls you by entering through the skin, though it appears to only work on males. Also, it lost its effect after Hathor was out of range. Hathor was able to just breathe out the substance. The men around her appeared to almost enter a drunken stupor by her presence. That said, after the effects wear off, you become immune. Apophis used an unknown method of brainwashing on Tilk. We don't know what it was, but it wasn't Nishta, since they weren't able to just electrocute Tilk and call it a day. According to Tilk, the use of a sarcophagus was involved. We see yet another method of brainwashing used by Ball on the Jaffa Council. It's unlikely that this is the same method used by Apophis, as no sarcophagus was used. What we do see is that it uses a brainwashing device which appears to output a signal that rewires the brain. The machine effectively convinces you of something, but rather than doing this with words or evidence, it reprograms your brain. As a result, you are certain that the conclusion the device implanted into you was your own. However, it does mean a real possibility that the victim will realize the contradiction. Tilk managed to resist because of his certainty of who he was and what he believed. As mentioned, we see this with the Jaffa Council. They were completely unaware they were enacting Ball's will. When Mazeo realized what has happened was a result of brainwashing, he was horrified by it.
Tell me one thing that happened the night before last, and I will let this rest.
Please leave me. I'm weary.
So it appears that this method of brainwashing is not as absolute as the other methods, though it could also be a result of how much exposure they have to the device. Another more insidious method is known as the Za'tark. Rather than overtake the individual, the victim is instead reprogrammed. It is a tiny reprogramming that is designed to be triggered at a very specific event. For example, during our first encounter with the Za'tark, they were used as assassins, so they were triggered by the presence of their target to kill it. Once the deed is done or they fail the task, they self-terminate. It only takes a few seconds to create a Za'tark. The act of falling unconscious in Goa'uld territory is enough to make one vulnerable to Za'tark technology. What makes Za'tark so nefarious is that there's no way to know who it is. Even the victim is oblivious to it. The only method of detection is to compare the person's memories. The process of creating a Za'tark will cause a discrepancy between the person's conscious and subconscious memories. This is no simple lie detector. You need a way to compare the memories in order to find out. Malcolm Baird was another victim of Goa'uld brainwashing. Ball used him to enact an escape plan. He not only unwittingly enacted Ball's plan, but performed actions like a programmed robot. More specifically, he made a bad call, which led Ball, or rather the Balls, to control the SGC. It is impossible to say which method was used, or if it was a new one entirely. Baird did not worship Ball, but he was completely convinced his actions were his own. Frankly, this sounds like a combination of what Ball used on the Jaffa Council, combined with Za'tark technology. Some other examples of Goa'uld technology is the memory recall device, a machine that enhances the memory of the user to the point even obscure memories can seem like they're happening in the moment. Paired up with a holographic projector, you can see precisely what the person went through. This can be used as a method of interrogation, as the individual doesn't need to say what they know. If the brain so much as drifts towards what they shouldn't think about, it will display. Of course, it's not infallible. The solution is to just not think about it. These orbs are long-range visual communication devices, almost like a Goa'uld Skype or Zoom. They can be as small as a tennis ball or massive. The Karakesh, also known as the Ribbon device, is perhaps the most iconic piece of Goa'uld technology. A gauntlet on the left hand of the Goa'uld. This Swiss Army knife of technology comes with several functions. That said, it's rather hard to pin down what are different functions and what is the same function but given a different effect. Also, because the Goa'uld technology is often customized, we don't know if it's a feature unique to that Goa'uld. So, we'll go over everything we witnessed.
Hey, Hey, watch where you're pointing that thing.
The ribbon device contains a personal shield generator. When activated, it blocks attacks containing too much energy, kinetic or otherwise. Plasma bolts and bullets are blocked. However, slower moving projectiles like throwing knives can go through.
Don't pay for this insolence!
The device often acts as a remote for nearby technology, though this probably means it has to be synced like a Bluetooth. On the front is a crystal, which can do quite a few things. It can hypnotize the target, putting them into a trance-like state. It can create a beam that links to the target's brain. This can be used to torture them or kill them. The target is borderline paralyzed when this happens. You can put it against the person's forehead to scramble their brains. Dame Devlin's words, not mine. Or it can be used to scan the target. The energy from the ribbon device can be used to neutralize certain attacks. Or it can launch a blast of kinetic energy that can launch a full-grown man meters across a room. Now, this kinetic blast isn't harmful per se, but if there's a solid object like a wall behind this person, well, that's a different story. Or it can launch this different style of energy blast, one more destructive and lethal than the kinetic blast. And this one can kill and damage objects. Hathor and Nearty had customized their hand devices to have a cloaking device. The fact a neural link is created between the Goa'uld and its target means that there is a possibility for limited telepathic communication. However, this is unexplored and experimental, only seen when Shara connected with Daniel. Moving on from the ribbon device is the sarcophagus. Its ability for healing is so powerful, it can bring the dead back to life, even reverse genetic manipulation. If you use it when there's nothing left to be fixed, it will enhance your body. However, the sarcophagus exacts a toll on the mind. Use it too much, and it will begin acting like a narcotic. You'll begin becoming self-obsessed, delusional, and addicted. Staff weapons are plasma cannons and come in various sizes and yields. In fact, they had a whole variety of plasma weapons from plasma repeaters to plasma bombs. The Zat was another weapon firing a bolt that isn't electricity, but it does behave like electricity, providing energy and conducting through metal. The first shock wreaks havoc on the body, inflicting pain so intense that sometimes the person passes out. The second shot inflicted soon after will kill them, or at least it usually kills them. Ironically, when it's first introduced, the wording suggests that it's not a guaranteed.
The Goa'uld take great pleasure in discharging the weapon only once on a subject, causing him great pain, disabling but not killing him. A second shot will kill most subjects.
Nice.
But it's treated as guaranteed after that. And after a third shot, the target is disintegrated. This weapon needs its own video. Side note, I've always liked the disintegration aspect. I like weapons that disintegrate, and I wish that we could have seen it with better CGI.
Rebel, sir.
Ring transporters. And okay, this needs clarification. There's a budget difference between the movies and the TV show. In the TV show, Jaffa helmets were rather static, unmoving except for the transformation sequence. In the movies, they moved at the behest of the wearer, acting almost like second heads.
How you doing?
The trans-phase eradication rod could detect things out of phase and even kill them. Intar fired an energy bolt that could only stun. A variety of handheld explosives, but their explosions are big. Then you have these stun grenades that use light and sound to render a person unconscious and even temporarily blind. This belly thing, Bodis? Anyways, it can turn a human into a Jaffa. Then there's the healing device. It doesn't have the negative side effects like the sarcophagus, but it's also much weaker. But its healing properties are still seriously impressive. It can't bring the dead back to life, but if you aren't dead yet, it can heal fatal injuries. It helped remove the retrovirus off Cassandra. And Jacob nearly saved Daniel from... I don't know what to call this. Daniel was exposed to 9 grays of neutron radiation. How impactful was that? One comparison I could make is the 1999 Tokamura nuclear accident. The 2 victims were Masato Shinohara, who was exposed to 6 to 10 sieverts of neutron and gamma radiation, and Hisashi Uichi, who was exposed to 17 sieverts. The precise grays are unknown, but it's estimated that Uichi was exposed from 15 to 25 grays, and Shinohara 6 to 9 grays. And it was so damaging to his body, I've seen some describe it as living inside a corpse. Then you have the aptly named Demon Core, a plutonium-gallium sphere that claimed 2 victims. Harry K. Dalgan was exposed to 3 grays of neutron and gamma radiation, and Louis Slotkin was exposed to 10 grays, the same as Daniel. Despite the damage, Jacob was nearly able to save Daniel. These so-called rods of anguish torture victims, coursing energy through their bodies to the point it can even be seen through their eyes and mouth. Then you have Tax.
Technicatels?
Takuyuna Tagamunataron. Tax.
Automated plasma turrets that can target heat signatures, each the size of a pool ball, but it can only point in one direction. These rings are given to Zatarks. It fires a beam of not even plasma, but what appears to be a hyper-intense light, a laser, and it can even be overloaded and explode.
Stop.
We have various methods of genetic manipulation. Some method of terraforming planets. The reason so many planets are identical to Earth is because the Goa'uld terraformed them to be that way.
Apparently Abydos was the exception, not the rule, as far as trees are concerned.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, in order for a planet to support human life, there must be some sort of carbon-based vegetation, right?
It is no accident. Many Stargate worlds were terraformed by the Goa'uld centuries ago.
Because the Goa'uld nature is to steal technology, it makes listing what exactly is Goa'uld technology rather difficult. For example, Anubis had created the Cull Warriors. The armor was so durable that even C4 and Tomahawk missiles couldn't injure the wearer. A device even more potent than the sarcophagus, breathing life to what was never life to begin with. Asgard holographic technology.
I am Anubis.
Anubis had this recon probe. I mentioned how Nearty and Hathor had cloaking devices. Anubis also got his hands on some. And even the ability to just download knowledge right out of your brain. All of this he created using ancient knowledge or Asgard knowledge. No other Goa'uld have these except for Baal, who began serving Anubis. So, in the beginning, I had mentioned the Fermi Paradox, and that the Goa'uld are Stargate's answer to it. But how? You see, by the time the Tari had discovered the Goa'uld, the parasites had already overrun the majority of the galaxy. Races that could pose a challenge were few and far between, and the rest were either primitive, peaceful, or in hiding.
Now what?
Nations conquered are reduced back to primitive civilizations, incapable of sending signals into space. And hence, the dead space. Where are all the aliens? Dead or primitive because the Goa'uld cleansed their civilization with fire. And the advanced civilizations remaining don't send signals into space. How advanced are the Goa'uld? This is very hard to pin down. If you listen to my Asgard analysis, I mentioned how there's a lack of good methods to measure a level of advancement, and the ones that exist are flawed. If we go by the Kardashev scale, then we need to look at how much energy the Goa'uld will consume. We have no real numbers, but we do have a number of impressive statements. The big one was when Anubis hurled an asteroid of Naquadah at Earth. The original plan was to use a 1 gigaton nuke to deflect the asteroid, have it miss Earth. But Carter realized that a significant chunk of the asteroid's core was Naquadah, and would enhance the nuke to the power of a small nova.
The explosion will be enhanced by the Naquadah, probably to the force of a small nova. This close to
Now this comes when the series started to not give numbers, and this is very vague. The issue is, we don't know how much Naquadah is in the asteroid, only that it makes up 45% of the asteroid's total mass. And the asteroid itself was so big it would have wiped out all life on Earth. So that's not an insignificant amount. But the smallest nova isn't an insignificant amount either. Starting from the top, Carter says that this asteroid would wipe out all life on Earth. Is this an exaggeration? How big you have to be to wipe out humanity, and how big you have to be to wipe out all life on Earth, including tiny bacteria, microbes, and fungi, are massively different. Obviously, if the blast can affect humanity, then large animals would also be impacted, but the tiny animals tend to be hardier. Then there is the mention of the nova. Nova are different than supernova. Nova occur in binary systems. The smaller but denser white dwarf will begin leaching matter from its less dense companion, usually hydrogen. Once this is pulled in, it causes a thermonuclear explosion of biblical proportions. Once that is done, the star returns to normal. Compare that to a supernova. There are actually several types of supernova. You're probably most familiar with the Type 2 core collapse supernova, but the important part is that the star is not there after the fact. If there is something left, it's either a neutron star, which is considered to be the corpse of a star, or a black hole. For reference, the Tsar Bomba, the biggest nuclear bomb ever detonated as of the recording of this video, was 210 petajoules. That's roughly 2 exponential 17 joules. Nova are roughly exponential 38 joules. Exponential 21 times larger than the Bomba. I don't know the name of that number, but it doesn't matter. If that's still too vague, the Death Star's laser was roughly exponential 32. So that asteroid had more energy than a single shot from the Death Star, roughly 1 million times more. Oh yeah, if you're wondering, a supernova is roughly exponential 44 joules, roughly 1 million times more powerful than a nova. While this is all well and good, it's hard to determine what this means. That was not an insignificant amount of Naquadah. The asteroid's length is twice of that of the Ha'tak. Even if we divide the length in half because the core was 44% Naquadah, it's still the size of a mothership. However, the loss of this Naquadah was clearly a non-issue for the Goa'uld. We also hear several statements of Naquadah chain reactions causing a significant chunk of the planet to the whole planet blowing up.
Well, you'd better have a damn good reason, because I was 20 minutes away from detonating a weapons-grade shipment of Naquadah that would have vaporized a sizable chunk of this planet.
Sir, that entire planet could be destroyed.
But once again, this is all very vague. How much Naquadah? And are those descriptions exaggerations? Another impressive explosion we see was from the destruction of Apophyse's flagship. In Enemies, the team had to escape the self-destruct of the ship, a blast so large that they could not get out of range even on sublight engines, and had to kill the engines and raise the shield once they were far enough. Unfortunately, we don't have enough information to glean from this to make any fair assessments. As dumb as it sounds, it's even possible that the producers forgot their sublight engines are actually, you know, sublight, and thought they were moving at speeds of tens of kilometers as opposed to tens of thousands. Otherwise, the explosion from that self-destruct was big enough it would actually consume the totality of Earth.
Sam, let's get the hyperdrive running.
Then you have Descent. A Ha'tak crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and its self-destruct went off under the water. A Ha'tak crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and its self-destruct went off on the ocean floor. The depth of the ocean obviously varies, but the shallowest I could find out in the area is about 2 to 3 kilometers deep. The depth a rescue submersible can descend depends on the make and model, but the deepest one can go is around 2 kilometers deep. Despite the depth, the self-destruct was big enough that it appears to breach the surface of the water, giving a 2-kilometer radius fireball. Citizen Joe mentioned something interesting. He says the sinking of a Russian submarine coincides with the time Anubis' ship crashed into the Pacific Ocean.
And this, about the sinking of a Russian submarine? It happened the same time Anubis's ship crashed into the Pacific Ocean.
This is likely an error on the writer's part, as it was an Asgard ship that crashed into the ocean, and a surviving replicator caused the destruction of a Russian submarine. It's not the rescue sub that the self-destruct blew up. Jacob and Davis were on it. You know, the two who were very not blown up. And there was no way the sub moved away fast enough that it could escape the blast if it was so big it could sink a random Russian sub in some undisclosed location. But without more details, we can only guess that the self-destruct was double-digit or even triple-digit megatons. Something to also mention is their hyperdrives. Goa'uld hyperdrives are advanced enough they have the potential to travel between galaxies within hours. Example being in Exodus, then enemies. They traveled 400 million light years in maybe an hour, so thanks to the replicators. Then you have when O'Neill modified a cargo ship that it could fly to another galaxy, though they did burn the engines. It seems that the Goa'uld can travel between galaxies. The issue is optimization. Because the Goa'uld just stole the technology, they don't realize what it's truly capable of until someone or something with proper knowledge adjusts a few dials to reveal its true potential. The replicators optimize the mothership, then use themselves to provide extra energy. O'Neill couldn't provide extra energy, but he did optimize the engine, and no, the Zat doesn't count. One thing that does impact how much energy the Goa'uld consume is them rendering every civilization they rule over medieval or more primitive. The vassal states are gifted advanced technology only on occasion, but as you can imagine, their energy consumption is relatively low as a result. Another issue is the fact that they stole most of their technology from various civilizations of various technological levels, including the Asgardian Ancients. The result is that the Goa'uld are a strange hodgepodge of technology of drastically different levels of advancement. The Goa'uld are a good example of the limitations of the Kardashev scale. Given everything, the Goa'uld would be a high type 2 to a base type 3 on the Kardashev scale. Granted, you'll have to make your way up the hierarchical ladder to see the most advanced technologies, as the Goa'uld more often send waves of primitives armed with only the basics.
You're almost there.
On the Barrow scale, they'd reach a type 4, as the Goa'uld make frequent use of nanotechnology for various effects. You also have Goa'uld like Nirti, who can manipulate DNA, and this isn't like modern genetics. You would step onto a pedestal and she could resequence your genes in real time. When fighting the Goa'uld, one rule stands above all else. Do not underestimate them. When you see them throw strategy out the window in favor of throwing slave soldiers at the front, you might think you're in for an easy slaughter. Do not be fooled. It's why so many have fallen to the Goa'uld while the SGC didn't. They always took their enemies seriously. While they may throw their troops at you without care today, they may adjust their strategy tomorrow. The Goa'uld are a strange mix of brilliant and lazy into one. They've been the uncontested dominant force for thousands of years, and are further hindered by their own greed, lust for power, and overconfidence. The reason they throw their soldiers at you in waves isn't because they're too stupid to know better. For the Goa'uld, they just don't care. Who cares about the lives of a few thousands to millions of Jaffa? But if they really want to win, then they pull something brilliant out. As for the Jaffa, they work their brilliance when they're not being watched, but it's fear that drives them to rush the enemy lines in suicide charges. Better death than damnation. First and foremost, secure your ranks. The Goa'uld have multiple means of infiltration, ranging from taking hosts, to brainwash spies, to Za'tarks. And these are going to be your biggest threat, no matter if you're top dog or underdog. Za'tark technology is the most dangerous, as it needs more than a simple lie detector, and needs a way to compare memories. Fortunately, Za'tarks are also the least common infiltrator. Your greatest threat is brainwashed spies and hosts. Anybody who is going to be operating in Goa'uld territory needs to submit to a checkup for a Goa'uld symbiote.
What are you doing here? You were supposed to be detained with the others.
Major Carter's far more valuable to you if she hasn't been exposed.
That wasn't part of the plan.
No, she's right. While we're taking over the NID, she can infiltrate Stargate Command.
It's too risky.
You worry too much. The humans have no idea what's going on here.
According to Toker intelligence, the Trust launched at least 2 poison attacks against Goa'uld-occupied worlds after we took back the gate. That means they had to leave the relatively safe confines of the solar system and head out into the galaxy, where they ran the risk of being killed or captured.
What are you suggesting?
Any Goa'uld who got his hands on them would have discovered pretty quickly that they belonged to a top-secret organization with high-level connections to some of the most powerful governments and institutions on this planet, including the SGC, Area 51, and maybe even the ancient outpost in the Antarctic.
My God. You think they have been taken as hosts and sent back to Earth?
I think it's possible. They could have brought dozens, maybe even hundreds of symbiotes back with them. By now, the entire trust could have been taken over.
In fact, I'd even recommend regular random checkups. Reason being, if one manages to infiltrate, they'd likely have brought more symbiotes. So one mess up, and you might be completely compromised. The other threat is brainwashing. This one is harder to detect, but easier to prevent. Zatox are the only brainwashed agents that need a few seconds. Often the act of brainwashing an individual takes an extended period of time. When going off-world or losing contact, document everything and scrutinize everything. Even still, also future-proof for other methods of infiltration. When push comes to shove, the Goa'uld will innovate, such as when Apophis began training humans to infiltrate the SGC. Now, the effectiveness of this is questionable, as the moment one of them fails to produce an ID, the ruse will be up. But it shows that the Goa'uld will try new tactics in the face of a challenge. The threat of infiltrators is twofold. For one, they can weaken your organization from within. But the other is because they strengthen the Goa'uld. Your knowledge, your technology, your abilities, the Goa'uld will know it as if it's their own. And they will know your weaknesses. If you take pride in some hyper-advanced weapon, one host is all it will take for the Goa'uld to produce their own. When it came to races that could defeat the Goa'uld, they all had one thing in common. It was near impossible for the Goa'uld to acquire hosts. The replicators were machines. The Asgard, they struggled to get hosts. The only Asgard host mentioned in expanded media is Femir, but that's about it. And for the Ori, yes, the Goa'uld were mostly gone, but Ball was still kicking, so he counts. The only one with valuable knowledge were the Priors, and the only host they succeeded in acquiring was Adria. In an alternative timeline in the book Stargate Apocalypse, the Wraith invade Milky Way, though this isn't the galaxy-scale invasion you might expect. The Wraith don't truly take the Milky Way galaxy, rather they set up a permanent residence on Earth. They use Atlantis to set up a beachhead to farm the galaxy's denizens. It's hard to glean proper information from this. Unlike the replicators in Ori, the Wraith do not appear to have the ability to truly displace the Goa'uld. But that doesn't match the Wraith MO to begin with. They're farmers, not conquerors. Plus, the Wraith do not have their massive numbers like they did with the Ancients. Their success came from a number of reasons. One was Atlantis, which proved to be a massive factor. Two, nobody's shock, the Goa'uld didn't want to just dispel the Wraith, but also wanted to get their hands on Atlantis, since whoever controlled that controlled the galaxy. The second was because the Goa'uld could not take Wraith as hosts. Naquadah was poison to the Wraith, so much so that even feeding on a former host would kill them. Oh, and if you're wondering about Goa'uld versus Wraith, we don't have any hive ship action, but a Ha'tak easily made short work of a cruiser. One host is all it takes to turn your strength into theirs. Once your ranks are secure, we need to stop the Goa'uld from wiping you out. Yes, a fleet powerful enough can hold, but this is dependent on a lot of things. The Goa'uld Fleet is quite powerful. Not only that, after you defeat one, more will likely be sent. Now, it'll take time, this isn't the Wraith, but they will keep attacking you. Actually, let's take a moment to analyze how vast the Goa'uld Fleet is. And the answer is, there is no way to know. Our first proper encounter with the Goa'uld Fleet is when Apophis attacked Earth. If you want to know the power of the Goa'uld mothership, check out the Ha'tak tactical analysis. But Stargate had fallen victim to power creep. In the early series, even one mothership was considered a significant threat to the entire planet. In fact, their destruction was considered a massive loss to Apophis.
Tilky's right. Nearly all the warriors and serpent guards loyal to Apophis died on those two ships.
Expanded media is canonically contentious, but it explains that the reason this was a significant loss was because he was spread thin defending his vast domain, so that's where all his other motherships went. Thor claims that the System Lords can launch an attack 100 times larger than what Apophis had mounted.
The System Lords are capable of launching an assault 100 times more powerful than that which you previously withstood at the hands of Apophis.
Now, I don't know if the Asgard have a sense of exaggeration or generalization, but that's 200 Ha'tak if they don't. Though later O'Neill claims only 100 Ha'tak.
If this treaty doesn't happen, they're going to send 100 of those motherships here. You know as well as I do what that means.
That being said, while I don't know if the Asgard can generalize or exaggerate, we do know that O'Neill does simplify. But basically, it's a fleet of hundreds of ships. In Exodus, Apophis attacks Vorash with what I count to be 12 Ha'tak, plus his personal flagship, and they make a big deal about his fleet size.
And now we're about to take down Apophis and the largest Goa'uld fleet ever assembled.
If it works, we may be able to wipe out a significant part of Apophis' fleet in one shot.
In Lost City, Braytak reported Anubis was gathering the full force of his fleet, a fleet of more than 30 ships. During the Battle of Dakara, Ball brought to bear more than 40 Ha'tak, and the Replicators had more than 60. And for Continuum, well, I didn't count how many Ha'tak I saw on screen, but I'd wager there was less than 30. What the expanded material says about most of the fleet being busy defending the territory does make sense, but it also means there's no way to fairly evaluate the size of the Goa'uld fleet. For all we know, it's 1,000 ships protecting the territory and one being moved around. But it's clear that even 1 or 2 ships is considered powerful. Once the fleet starts becoming measured in the dozens, you're dealing with a superpower. So, if you can hold off a united Goa'uld fleet, you'll be in good shape. But let's face it, you're not holding off a Goa'uld fleet. What then? Stealth. Well, sort of. Because of the life science detector, if your planet is discovered, there's no hiding. So the key is to make sure your planet is never discovered. That's what the Tok'ra did. And in other ways, do what Earth did, and join the Protected Planets Treaty, which forbade the Goa'uld from invading. Okay, so you can stop invasions, and are now on the lookout for infiltration. What now? Well, to be safe, be on the lookout for more creative means of attack. The Goa'uld have used those in the past. A plague in Ryak's teeth that could wipe out all life on Earth. The bomb in Cassandra. Bombs from the Tolan. An asteroid. The Goa'uld have no shortage of sneaky methods. Okay, after that, now what? How can we take the fight to the Goa'uld? Now, if your force is overwhelming, you could completely overrun the Goa'uld just as the Replicators did. However, be very careful. We've seen on multiple occasions that attacking the Goa'uld with some new weapon gave the Goa'uld the new weapon. The biggest being Felger's virus that disabled the Stargate network. They had hoped to cripple Ball. Instead, Ball discovered the virus, repurposed it for his own goals, then unleashed it back on his enemies. You have Camulus with the Tainted ZPM. It was Camulus' suggestion that he take the Tainted ZPM to destroy Ball, but both O'Neill and Carter agreed that the possibility of Ball uncovering the plan and now acquiring a Tainted ZPM was too much of a threat.
Which is exactly why I didn't give Camulus the tainted one.
Sir?
I gave him the dead one. It's worthless, right?
Ball's gonna be pretty pissed at Camulus.
Yeah.
But what if you can't just overpower them? I mean, the Goa'uld fought the Alliance to a stalemate. Granted, they suffered far greater losses, but it was still a stalemate. I've seen many say that Earth could have defeated the Goa'uld Empire if they just committed the entire planet's resources. Yeah, no, debunking that would require a whole other video. Perhaps assassins should kill the Goa'uld leadership. Yes, but also no, it depends on how you do it. Anytime you kill a Goa'uld, another Goa'uld will fill in the power vacuum, a hydra of galactic proportions. If you want to defeat the Goa'uld by assassinating the leadership, you have to kill all of them in one go. This was the Tok'ra strategy, to keep them fighting each other while they wait for their moment to wipe them all out. Once the system lords are gone, all that's left is cleanup. So how did Earth actually defeat the Goa'uld? The answer is so simple yet so complicated. The true might of the Goa'uld comes from the slaves, the Jaffa especially.
The Goa'uld are not gods. It is a lie we live each day. Only when he takes a host does a Goa'uld become strong. Even then, only as strong as the Jaffa who serve them. Without us, the Goa'uld are nothing. We are their strength. We are their power. Until we choose to serve them no more.
It started with Tilk and Braytak, heretics who the Goa'uld could not smite. This put doubts into the minds of many Jaffa, not helped by the fact that they began murking other system lords. This made the Jaffa question and rebel. However, it should be noted that the ultimate death blow to the Goa'uld came from the Replicators. It was frankly these two in tandem that brought an end to the Goa'uld. Seeing these so-called gods fail again and again had the Jaffa turn on them en masse. So just sway hearts and minds then? Well, sort of. This was certainly powerful, but I think it's fair to say that if the replicators had not struck when they did, the war against the System Lords would have continued. But if the Jaffa had not held the Kara and forced Ball to retreat, the Jaffa would not have abandoned the Goa'uld in such numbers the way they did.
Although Ball got away, the fact that he turned tail and ran made the rebel victory every bit the turning point Teal'c and Bra'tac were hoping for. Jaffa from all over the galaxy are joining with them.
Well, viva la revolution.
But between the Tok'ra, Jaffa Rebellion, and the Tar'ri, we see the same trends. Keep the Goa'uld preoccupied fighting each other, don't let them build a united force. And try to sway the hearts and minds of their slaves, show them that the Goa'uld are not gods. And with that, you can stand up to this reign of terror.
Behold, the last of the System Lords.